Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sean Hunter. I've been with Turnkey since 2011. I am now a senior GP functional consultant. And for my first session, I'll be going through some of the different things in SmartLists that you may or may not have realized. So hopefully you'll pick up some different tricks and things that I've learned over the years as we go through it. Save questions, send those over as you work through, and we'll go from there. So first area that I want to get into is what can you use SmartLists for? And if you're using SmartLists today, you understand the concepts and things that you can use SmartLists for. There's really no issues using SmartLists for different reporting type things other than when you start to run into record caps and things along those lines. So SmartLists can be used in GP lookups. They can be set up for defaults by user. So these are just three different things that I wanted to bring to your attention that you can use. So you can use those in the GP lookup windows and then set those as defaults in certain ones so that if you get in, it would automatically list that favorite that you have saved in SmartList as the view that pulls up immediately when you look up some records in a window. A good example of that, a customer wanted only their salesperson to see only their list. Wasn't more of a security thing, but more of just a convenience thing because they had tons of customers, but the customer only wanted to weed through their list of customers. So we set it up and said, okay, this is their default customer to look at, or their default salesperson to look at, set that as their default view, and all of a sudden, every time they did a lookup for the customer, it was just their list of customers they had to work through. Next one is it can be used to find out who did what in the system. So one of the common things people look for a lot of the times on different transactions is who did this, who posted it, who entered it, who created this, whatever it may be. Where did it come from? So there's a lot of those things that we can look at as we get into the demonstration section as well. And then the biggest thing that I push with any new client going live with GP, using GP, or anybody who I find struggling or having to sit through going into the inquiry windows and some of the different lookups, that is using SmartLists as an inquiry methodology. So using it to look things up because you can quickly find your records, and then of course if you double click on that record, it opens it up and you're able to get into it and look at it. So those are three different things that I like to bring up for SmartLists to be used as that we'll take a look at as we dive further into it. Next section is did you know? So with your SmartLists, did you know that you can save your SmartLists in multiple different places so that they're easy to access? So you can save them in your My Reports section. You can set them up as homepage shortcuts. You can also set them up in your quick links. So there should never be an issue where you're constantly having to pull up the SmartList window and drill down into the folder, drill down into the next folder, and find your favorite that you saved the last time. Why not add it as a shortcut in one of these different locations that you see on the screen here? So ease of access, absolutely one of those things you can do with those. Did you also know that if we link up the SmartList in our shortcut pane on the home page, you could even stick a keyboard shortcut on it? And that goes a broader topic. You could put any window you wanted to into your shortcut pane and have it pull up with a keyboard shortcut as well. But keep that in mind. If you had a function key that you really loved on your keyboard and you wanted it to pull up your SmartList that narrows down your list of sales documents you need to review for shipping, you could plug that into one of the F keys that's on the keyboard, and voila, you've got a quick and easy way to get to it. Last one, and I bring this up just for any new customers that have been working with the system or any customers who have been using the system. Maybe you're newer to GP and you just didn't know it was there. But those reminders that you see on the page here on your home page, maybe you have some, maybe you have nothing on there. Your SmartLists are the engine that drives those different reminders. So when you get in and it says, hey, you've got fulfillment orders to pick, or you've got open purchase orders out here for this vendor, or past due customer transactions, and it gives you a dollar amount, the mechanism behind there is a list of SmartList records. So if you were to open up SmartList and look at past due customer transactions, it gives you all those records. Well, that's what these reminders go off of to help prompt you on your daily work that you may need to focus on. So tuning up your SmartList, getting a good SmartList favorite, and then bolting it onto your homepage can help add some efficiency to your day by day. Next section And I threw these all on here just as a reference point. Obviously, everybody gets access to the presentation once we're done, so just so it's not just me talking and everything, there's a little visual to go along with it. But some new things to look for in your SmartList functionality in the system if you're jumping or have jumped to the most current version of GP. So today we'll be looking at GP 2018 R2, or 2019 as it's referenced in other areas. There's different naming methodologies or naming schemes for it. We'll clarify that whenever you reach out for an upgrade. But these are some of the new things that are out there. So added now is the ability to set up some security on your favorites. Probably have brought this up in past when we talked about what's new for the system, but I just want to emphasize that if you ever ran into an issue where somebody took your SmartList favorite that you created and spent time on and destroyed it, this is a great way to be able to set up some security on those, not only at the system level. Maybe you're an administrator and you're going to define the SmartLists that are out there to begin with, and you don't want people to modify those. They can go off of those, but anything that exists in the system to begin with, you can't modify it without that password. Next one below there is your ability to do it by the user level. So as you get in and you start to define a new SmartList, and I set one of these up, I can bolt on a password to that, which then if somebody would come in and try to remove that, make changes to it or anything, it would prompt for that password and say, hey, you gotta put in the password before you can do with it. Now they could create a new SmartList favorite, no issues, and it's their own, but they wouldn't be able to modify the one that you're using out there. Big reasoning there. Maybe it's used as reminders on multiple people's home pages. Maybe it's used other places in the system, and it's a primary business function SmartList that you have, so you don't want people touching it. So that password is a great functionality there. Don't have to add it, but it is available for you to use. So next one is the default visibility. I like this addition just from the simple standpoint that anytime you get in and you add a new SmartList favorite, before this functionality was added in, it would add it and save it to the system, which meant that if you had 12 different company databases or even just one company database, all of a sudden Sean's SmartList for sales shows up for everyone. And all of a sudden in a month's time or shorter sometimes, you've got a cluttered mess of SmartList favorites that are out there for everyone to have to go through. So using the default SmartList visibility and setting it to user is a great way to help mitigate some of that, because when a user gets in and they try to create a favorite, it would just default to user ID so that it's saving it for themselves. If they wanted to change that and make it visible to the company because it's beneficial for everyone, then they could make that change there and change it at that point. But at least it would default to it so you didn't have people accidentally throwing those into the SmartList favorites. And then the last one is probably one of my favorites that they've added in, is the ability to add some new date search definitions. So there's 4 new options down at the bottom of that when you're defining a date parameter for your search definitions. I find it extremely beneficial to set these types of things up, especially for your reminders on your homepage, to let you know of, collections that you need to go look at or whatever it may be. So now we've got the prior month, next month, prior period, next period, which means that you can kind of get a larger window of information showing up in your SmartList favorites versus it being a date definition that you have to put in there to get previous month and so on. So just a little bit more of a dynamic date capability there for it that you could bolt onto it. So again, you don't have to go in and specify the date for last month every single time you want to do it. You could put in the beginning of this month to, prior month or whatnot. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so then the last part of this is, hey, it's great. We talked about it up until this point, but show me, right? So let's go ahead and let's walk through the different topics that we discussed today, just so that you see it and we can see that navigation. And of course, it's beneficial for you. Later on, this gets posted and you have it as access that you can pass around and share with your colleagues and anyone you find that would benefit from it. So I'm going to back out of this. We're going to get a quick glimpse of some information here. And let's go ahead and hop into GP. Okay, so the first thing, using a SmartList in the GP lookups. So let's say that I get in and I want to look up my customers. Just the standard run-of-the-mill GP customer maintenance window here, and I go to the lookup. Now here, underneath the options within here, if I hit this drop down on this menu and I drill down, this list coincides with the list of SmartList favorites that I've developed in the system. So if I've created a new SmartList out there that just gives list of customers on hold, then my list pairs down to it. Granted, I don't have anything at the moment with customers on hold. I can go in and throw one on that. But we can do customers balance. We can do any one of those that's saved out there. Maybe we would just want a list of NSF customers or past due customers. This is a good example. There's just a list of my past due customers. And then within this window, and a lot of other ones out there, you should see an option for set as default view. So now, as a user, I've gone and created a SmartList favorite that benefits me, and now I'm setting that as the default view when I get into Lookup customers. So again, you probably want a broader topic on it than customers overdue or customers, past due balance, whatever it is. But that ability to set those up, or even items and whatnot, this is a great way of being able to define that so that the next time I get in and I look something up, it immediately throws that filter into it. And again, this list that you see out there, these are all the custom SmartList favorites that I've added in the system for you to take advantage of. That same setting goes with any of the other ones out here. If you ever set one and you realize that you didn't want to do that, just switch it back to all customers and then hit set as default view, and then it just runs it back to where it was to begin with. But great functionality there to be able to use. So the next one that we had on our list was, what do we do for finding users that have entered the document? Who entered in my sales document? Who created the purchase order? Who posted the transaction in the system? So on and so forth. So the majority of transactions, I say the majority, there are some that still don't have it, unfortunately, but the majority of them do have, behind the scenes, the ability to see what has happened with them. So for instance, if we take our sales and we go underneath transactions, and then we go in and we go to the columns, there should be an additional one in here for user. And what I normally do is I just type in user and just start looking through here. So here's the posted user. And then if we keep looking through here, of course we get all the user defined ones, but there's also a user to enter. So maybe I wanted a list of, okay, who created my invoice? Who actually put it in? And then who posted that? So we could add those two columns to this SmartList to gain that information. So that's usually my good rule of thumb for finding these. Put in user and just look for that column. And once you find it, then we start to gain visibility of that information out here for who's done what. From a financial standpoint, same concept. Except in here, we gain access to a host of columns called originating. So let's go ahead and we'll grab the user one again. So there's our last user. We've got, of course, our user defined, and then the user who posted. So we've got a lot of different things on here. So let's go ahead and we'll use the, we'll grab the last user as well for this. And then the other ones that I wanted to bring up is if we come in and we type in originating here. And you got to spell it right, but once we find that, now we've got all of these columns from an accounting standpoint, from an account transaction standpoint, that tell us where it came from. Okay, this was the originating debit and credit amount for that line. This was the original document number. These are beneficial if somebody changed an amount. So if all of a sudden your sales ledger says 1,000, but that same posting on the general ledger side says 900, well, you could run this SmartList and say, okay, well, when it came across, my credit was 1,000 for this, the way that it originated from the sales side, somebody modified that over on the other side. And you could even look at the last user, you could look at the user who posted whatever to kind of help track some of that information down, but you could see that discrepancy here for the differences between those. So these originating columns that you see in the financials are extremely beneficial to help track that down. Master ID, master name, that's your customer or vendor ID, customer or vendor name. So again, if you're not leveraging these to help find where certain pieces of information came from, or if you wanted to just narrow it down and look at specific customer postings, whatever it may be, these originating columns in here are very helpful pieces of information. So let's go ahead and we'll just add a couple of these in. We'll add several and say okay, and just see the way that this looks now that I've kind of added in a few additional fields within it. So user who posted, originating document number, that helps me track down if I was to go into purchasing, I could find that receipt number over there, inventory transactions and so on. There's my customer vendor ID showing up. So lots of information, again, to help find who did what, where did it come from, what is it type of information. And of course, if you run into a wall and you can't find something thereafter, reach out, ask us the question. Chances are there's something that we can find within it, or maybe there's something that you could use to enhance the system, help you audit more, especially if you're looking for more in-depth information of who changed what type stuff. All right, so the last one on the, what can you do with the smart lists is they're a quick and easy way to inquire on information. So from a sales transaction standpoint, or customer lookup, purchase orders, whatever it may be, I like to establish these lookups for users to utilize, and then bolt them onto the shortcuts, the quick links, or the My Report section, whatever it may be, to be able to utilize those. So if we go in and we look at the document lookup here, and we drill down in this, underneath the search, anything that you want to search by, if you put contains in this and a blank value, then it's just a matter of filling that in to look for that information. So I want to find any customer with Bob out there. Okay, so there's any customer that has Bob in the contact name. So quick and easy lookups. And the reason I say that is anytime that we're in the search and you want to create a lookup from a smart list, simply put in the 4 fields that you want to search by in there. If you run out of fields with the 4, just create multiples as I did with this one. And then set it to contains and a blank slate. And then establish that as your favorite. Give it a name. And then save it as your new favorite. Now you can get in, and anytime you want to search within that, give it a double click or go in through your shortcut on the home page, fill in the field that you want to search by or multiple fields, and there you go. You've got a quick and easy lookup on your sales transactions and your purchase orders, your inventory transactions, customers, so on and so forth. So lots of functionality available there using those. Speeds up, I think, the lookup immensely because maybe you're not real familiar with the customer IDs, or maybe your customer IDs are just numeric and it's so much easier to look by parts of the customer name or whatever it may be. Okay, so on our homepage, wanted to bring this up as we're out here and we're establishing different reports or different smart lists that we like and we want to gain access to it. If you come over to your shortcut pane over here on the left-hand side, this entire section here is your shortcut pane. Give it a right click, it'll bring up the flyout menu, and then we can add any one of these values. One of those being smart lists. So if I add a smart list, I would find my smart list that I wanted to add. Maybe I want my sales line items, whatever it may be. There's that keyboard shortcut I mentioned. Lots of keyboard shortcut capabilities out there. You're going to end up digging yourself a hole pretty quickly if you use a lot of those. But, sticking with the primary function keys here, extremely beneficial. Now all of a sudden you have the F9 key pulls up this smart list for you to begin with. Once we're done, we hit add, and now it's over here in my list. So lots of functionality adding it there. You have the same function on your quick links. Hover over the top of the quick links, hit the pencil. In here, we can add, and we can add direct access to one of the pages out here. Unfortunately, direct access to smart list isn't a function within the quick link. So you have to get a little bit more creative if you're going to add those types of things to it. You'd have to link directly to the smart list and then drill through there. So definitely beneficial to use the shortcuts over here to gain access directly to your smart list. And then the last one is our My Reports section. So shortcuts great. My Reports are kind of nice because they're available underneath the drop down here. Anytime I add a new smart list and I set it as user ID as long as I haven't hit my limit on this dropdown, it adds it to it. So that Sean Sales for SmartList, because I saved it as a favorite under my user ID, it adds it automatically to my reports. So if you hadn't seen that, whenever I went into my favorites and I set visible to user ID and saved it, it adds it under my reports section. If you want to add a SmartList to your My Reports section outside of just the ones out there or a system one, whatever it may be, find the module that it's in. Find SmartList favorites in the listing over here on the left-hand side. It does take a moment to load these up, but should go pretty quick thereafter. Lots to work through. Find your SmartList that you want to use in your My Reports. Check the box, and then up at the top is an Add to My Reports. So instead of using the user ID one and saving it just for yourself, if it's a system-wide one that everyone's using, this is the way you can gain access to it. Find the module it's in, SmartList favorites, check the box, add to. You can give it a different name if you want to, but I'm going to say OK. And now it's available underneath my reports section as well. I like that one just because it's available no matter where I go. Okay. Last one on the home page. Cancel, don't leave. Eventually saved by the bell here. Is your reminders. So any SmartList established as it is right now, or something that you've set up in the system or that you define yourself, those can be bolted onto the GP reminders. And that can be done at the time that you create a brand new favorite. So if you're creating a new favorite and as you set this up and you're defining that favorite, as you save it, so let's go for, quotes expiring this week. I doubt that I have anything. But as I go and I set this up, there's that option as I'm adding this to add it as a favorite and reminder. But if you've already saved that and you want to add that as a favorite, so like this one comes out of the box with the system, right? So if I wanted that to be a reminder on my homepage versus adding it here, or I've already added my favorite and I can't go back in and re-add it as a reminder at that point, if I go through the to-do section here, click on the little pencil, and that should bring up my to-do section. There we go. And I go through the arrow here, get into my reminders window, and I go new. Now I'm looking up my SmartList favorites. And I know that started with quotes. Quotes expiring this week. Select that. This is where you want to make sure you plug this in correctly. You want to make sure that the number of records is greater than 0. So when there aren't any quotes expiring this week, it doesn't even show up for me. When there are quotes, then it does show up. Display that as a queue if you want to. All that does is puts a little pile of papers to let you know you got a lot of work to do, and then say OK. And like I said, next time I log onto my homepage and look at this, if there were quotes expiring this week, all of a sudden they show up in my to-do section. I click on that, and that drills me into SmartList, where now I can take action upon those specific settings. Okay. And then the last few things to look at were the pieces that are available now new in the system. I mapped those out on the screenshot just for how you get to them, but just real quick, if you wanted to go in and set up some of the system defaults, administration, underneath setup, system preferences, this is where we can establish the default view visibility as you're working with it. Scroll down just a little bit in our setup section and go to SmartList options. This is where you can establish the system, modify favorite. You can also mark a couple other things for matching case. So if you found that people were having issues with matching case on fields and stuff, you can turn those on as well. But the SmartList favorite password there, that just sets the system one so that any SmartList favorites that you have at the moment established in the system would automatically require a password now to be updated and modified. Okay. And then as we go in, and we look underneath our smart lists and we're defining dates, just keep in mind as you add new smart list favorites within here, and let's say that you were looking at quotes expiring this week, or maybe you wanted to look at quotes that expired last month or whatever it may be, as we go in and we set up our date search criteria within here, now you've got those additional pieces down at the bottom in GP 2018 to be able to use prior month, next month, and so on. When I use prior month, it just needs to be an equal to statement, unless I wanted to do between and say, okay, I wanted everything last month and this month. You could do a little bit different and say, okay, prior month and the end of current month or whatever, or the beginning of the month, whatever it may be. So you could do an equals to get everything from just last month, or you could do a between to get everything from last month to the end of this month, and so on. So new functionality out there for these. Hope to see more as they go through and they add more to it. I would love for them to have a does not contain added to this list or something along those lines. So hopefully they'll add those pieces somewhere down the road.